بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم لإيلاف قريش إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف فليعبدوا رب هذا البيت الذي أطعمهم من جوع وآمنهم من خوف.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين نبينا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Inshallah, today we are beginning the study of Surah Quraish. Surah Quraish. This surah is a Makki surah. It's a Surah Makkiyah. Quraish, actually, it comes from the word takarrush. And takarrush bima'na for people to gather from different places. And if you look at the history of the Arabian Peninsula, you can see that people, tribes from different, we have the Mahzum, the Hashim, and then the Umayyad tribes, and all these other tribes. All of these people, they came from different places and then they settled down in Arabia. So from it we have Takarrush, and from it we have Quraish. So that is one meaning. People or tribes from different places coming together to settle at one place. So that's the first meaning of Quraish. Another meaning of it is at-takessub wa kanu tijaran, bimana at-takessub, earning, to try to earn a living. So if you look at that was their norm. The main thing that they used to do for a living was trade. Apart from trade, you hardly find other occupations there. So that was their main source of living, to trading. And so from it we have Quraish, and that means what at-takessub, earning. And so from it that's the second meaning. So it could be earned. Then this name could be earned from their occupation. Their occupation mainly was trying to do trade, at-tijara wa takessub, trading to earn a living. And so from it we have Quraish. And so the tasghir, the ismu tasghir, will be Quraish. I hope that is clear. Okay, the last meaning, which is the third meaning, which is very interesting, is the fact that and Muawiyah, there is a narration, and Muawiyah, bimana, this narration is from Muawiyah annahu sa'ala ibn Abbas. Muawiyah, he asked Ibn Abbas radiyallahu anhu, lima summiyat Qurayshun Qurayshan, why is Quraysh named Quraysh? And then he replied by saying that the dabbatin fil bahr ta'kulu wa la tu'kal. It is because of an animal in the sea. Ta'kul wa la tu'kal. It is eaten, but it is not eaten. It is, but it's not eaten. Bimana, it has the power to eat other animals, but that animal in itself is not eaten. Bimana is very powerful. So this is to try to depict their strength in the Arabian Peninsula. I hope that is clear. This is an allusion. It's trying to allude to something. وَتَعْلُو وَلَا تُعْلَى. And then it overcomes, but it is not overcome. It overpowers, but it is not overpowered. So such an animal, as I said, this is an allusion. Meaning Quraysh, if you look at it in the Arabian Peninsula, it has some kind of monopoly and some kind of power that is granted to them by Allah, such that they do whatever they want, but mainly people don't hate them. I hope that is clear. You are not, when we look at it in the surah, Allah is going to mention the favors that He has granted to them based on their earning and as well as protection. And this is the main thing that a human being will need to survive. If you look at great countries, the main thing that make them great, or that make a country stable, one is security. Two is, for them to have a living, for everybody to be able to eat. If there is food and then there is security, the place is going to be safe. And we'll look at it into details when we dive into the surah, inshallah. So Allah begin the surah by saying that لِإِيلَافِ Quraish, to make Quraish accustomed. If you look at the beginning here, there is a lam, which is a jar. Mainly in Arabic language, we don't start a sentence with a half a jar. It's not common. So when that is done, there is a reason. Most of the Mufassirin, they try to give an explanation for why this surah is beginning with lam, half a jar, like this, as you see. And so some of them says that this is tied to the next ayah. Ilafihim. Bimana, this lam here, because if you see for or to make Quraysh accustomed. It's not complete. I hope that is clear. So meaning there should be something. So they are saying that this ayah, this first ayah, li'ila fi Quraysh, is tied to the next ayah. That's one view of some Mufassirun. There are others who says that no, this is tied to the surah that came before it. The man of surah to feel. The last ayah of surah to feel, or even the whole of surah to feel, is tied to this. The manner Allah protect them against Abraha and then his army. Why? Li'ila fi Quraish, to make them accustomed. So that is another view of Mufassirun. Then the third view is the fact that no, some other Mufassirun say that no, it is not tied to this ayah, neither it is tied to surah to feel, but what is missing here, bimana, there is something mazuf that is removed here, and it is known, bimana. Sometimes you tell someone something and you expect that he should understand even though your sentence is not complete. So that is some of us who saying that Allah is just making the something is mazuf, something is removed here, but still it should be understood without being tied to anything. But Allah asks, whatever be the case, as I said, we won't dive much into the differences. We'll try to explain it based on the ijma, the majority, where most of the mufassirun they base their argument on. So Sheikh Sadi says here that قال كثير من المفسرين إن الجار والمجرور متعلق بالسورة التي قبلها. Most of the mufassirun, as I said, they have the view that this is tied to the previous surah, and we will see it is true. We will see it when we dive much into the surah, the remaining ayahs, we will see it. So this is still a continuation of the other surah, of the surah that came before it. And there are even narrations, there are hadiths of narrations about Sahabas who will still look at it, inshallah. So based on that fact that this is tied to the previous surah, that is surah to feel. And if you look at surah to feel, it was a surah where Makkah was in a state of danger. Abraha and his army, they came to destroy the Kaaba. And the Kaaba is what granted Quraysh the monopoly. You know, if you look at the Arabian Peninsula, all of the Arabs, the Arab tribes that are surrounding Mecca, they have their idols in the Kaaba. That time, idol worship was the common thing around every tribe. So every tribe used to have their idols in the Kaaba. So some Sirah, we have read in Sirah that they were even أكثر من 390 صنما. There were more than 360 idols. About 360 idols were located in the Kaaba, a place for the worship. And these tribes, so that granted Quraysh the monopoly, because if you misbehave towards them, they remove your idol. You know. So Abraham came to destroy the army, to destroy the Kaaba, which was what granted Quraysh the monopoly. And so Allah protected them. We all know what happened in Surah to Fil. You know, Allah destroyed them, this army, and protected the Kaaba. So Allah is, so this surah is so most of the Mufassirun are saying that that surah is a continuation of this. Bimana, like Sheikh Sadi says here, فَعَلْنَا مَا فَعَلْنَا بِأَصْحَابِ الْفِيلِ لِأَجْلِ قُرَيْشِ وَأَمْنِهِمْ وَاسْتِقَامَةِ مَصَالِحِهِمْ وَانْتِظَامِ رِحْلَتِهِمْ فِي الشِّتَاءِ لِلْيَمَنِ وَالصَّيْفِ لِلشَّامِ. Bimana, we did what we have, we dealt with the army of Abraham. Bimana, we dealt with the Ashab al-Fil. We did to them what we did to them in Surah al-Fil for Quraysh to be accustomed. Bimana, for them to remain calm, to continue with their ilafihim rihlat al-shita'i was-sayf. Let's look at the meaning of ilaf. Ilaf, actually it comes from ulfa. Ilaf comes from ulfa. And so ilaf actually is a masdar. It's a masdar which comes from ulfa. And then the actual verb is alafa, which means for someone to be accustomed to something, to become used to something. I hope that is clear, to become used to something. Similar or to and there are different meanings actually of ilaf, but that is the common one. To become used to something. Another meaning could be to have affection, to develop a soft heart towards something. But mainly it comes, the closest word to it in English will be habit. Okay, to be used to something, to be accustomed to something. So for example, you eat 3 times a day. You eat in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening. So as you are used to it, your body is used to it. So even if in the morning, if you don't eat, you don't feel normal. I hope that is clear. But look at the month of Ramadan. When it comes to the time of Ramadan, and then you are eating you just eat 2 times a day, early morning and then after breaking your fast. You now become used to, your body become used to it. So we can call this alafa. That's the verb, to be accustomed to something. And one thing we should note is that when someone become accustomed to something, you forget that it is a blessing. So when there is a favor of Allah on us, and it becomes something casual, we tend to look down upon the favor. That's the nature of human beings. And we shall see Allah tell them, فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. Don't think this is just something, Allah is just granting all these favors to you without anything. No. You are expected to enslave yourself to the master of this house. We shall see it. So only ilafi Quraish. For Quraish to be accustomed to what? رَحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. They used to go for. So that is the meaning of ilaf here. That's the meaning of ilaf here. And there is a narration that I would like to read from Imam Alusi and Umar ibn Maymun. So this particular Sahaba narrates this hadith. He says that Sallaytul Maghriba khalfa Umar ibn Khattab. I prayed Maghrib at the back of Umar ibn Khattab radiyallahu anhu ta'ala. فَقَرَأَ فِي رَكَعَةِ الْأُولَى. And then he recited in the first rak'ah وَالتِّينِ بمعنى سورة التين. وفي الثانية, and in the second rak'ah, أَلَمْ تَرَ وَإِيلَافِ قُرَيْشٍ مِنْ غَيْرِ أَنْ يَفْصِلَ بِالْبَسْمَلَةِ. And he recited Surah Al-Fil and Surah Al-Quraish without saying in between them Bismillah. So this is a particular Sahaba narrating from Umar radiallahu anhu. So this shows that even the Sahabas, they used to understand this surah as connected to the previous surah. That is what this narration is teaching us. So even if you look at how the Quran is arranged, the surahs, the arrangement of the surah, there are two particular views. Some scholars have the view that this is, even though it is the ijma of the Sahabas, but still it is revelation, it is tawqifiyah, it is part of revelation. It is, out of Allah's wisdom that they are arranged like that. And some says that, no, it's not part of revelation. It's not something from Allah. It's just the ijma of the Sahaba. That's just how the Sahabas wanted it. But actually, that is not, the Quran was put together, but actually it wasn't like this as we have it today. So some scholars say, no, it's not part of Allah's revelation. It's just how the Sahabas wanted it. It's only associated with the ijma of the Sahabas. It has nothing to do with revelation. So that is why some Mufassirun say. But fortunately, or the funny thing is that one of those who have that view is Shawkani, Imam Shawkani. But if you look at his tafsir on this particular surah, he himself, he cites this particular hadith and he back the fact that this surah is connected to the previous surah. So لإيلاف قريش بمعنى, like Sheikh Sa'di says here, فعلنا ما فعلنا بأصحاب قريش لأجل ما فعلنا بأصحاب الفيل لأجل قريش. We dealt with the أصحاب الفيل for Quraish. بمعنى لإيلاف قريش. Whatever we have done in Surah Al-Fil, it was for إيلاف قريش, for Quraish to be accustomed with their trade. Now the next ayah, إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف. إيلافهم رحلة الشتاء والصيف. Them being accustomed to journeying or to the caravan of the winter and the summer. Shita bimana winter, and then Soif is the summer. And these were two seasons where trade used to occur. In Shita, that is winter, they used to go to Yemen, because Yemen actually is a very hot place. So they will go there during the winter, because in the summer it is not possible to go there to be extremely hot. So they used to go there to Yemen in the winter, and that's Shita, Rihlata Shita. And Bil'aks, when it is summertime, Syria is somehow cold, so they used to go to Syria, that is in Saif, in summer. So they used to go to Sham in Syria to do their trade. But what happens is that this was a monopoly. This was something, they were only those who could do that. Like today, if you can remember, Yemen at that time, it was aligned with the Furs, the Persian Empire. They were aligned with Yemen. And then the Romans, the sham was associated with the Roman Empire. So if you are dealing with one, you can deal with the other. It's like today, if you look at the two superpower countries, they are always opposing one another. So if you are with this side, you can be with this side. If you are with that side, you can be with this side. So it's hardly you see a country which can be crossed doing trading or having relationship with two superpowers that are opposite or that are opposing one another. You hardly don't see it. Even when it comes to world wars, you see their sizes. This country is with here, this country is with this particular superpower, and these countries they are those with this superpower. So they are, but in Mecca at that time, they used to have monopoly. They could associate with whoever they want. They were only those who were granted that. They were those who were accustomed to those two trades. And they could do it. Why? Because both of these countries, Yemen and Syria, they both needed Mecca. Because both of them, their idols were in the Kaaba. So, whether they like it or not, they have to deal with them. Because it's like their idols were hostage. It was housed in the Kaaba. So they used to travel wherever they want. Other countries, you are with Syria, does it. You can be with Yemen again because they are associated with the Romans and Yemen at that time was associated with the Furs, the Persians. So you can't be with two. You have to be here. They used to hate one another. The Roman Empire and then the Persian Empire, they used to hate one another. So if you are with this side, you can be with this side. But Mecca, they used to be with these two trees. So the Ilafi Quraish, Allah granted them some kind of favor, such that they are accustomed to these two trees. They just go casually. They go here in the next season. They go here without any problem. So Allah says, "Ilafihim rihlat ash-shita'i was-sayf." Them being accustomed to journeying in the winter and the summer. And not only that, one thing you need to know is that if you look at here, rihla is used. Rihla is actually a trip where you are carrying large amount of luggage, caravans. It's not just any normal trip. Where rihla is used, it's not just any trip where you are going with a large luggages and then caravans or something or so. You are carrying a lot of goods. That's rihla. So if you look at camels, that time they use camels and then they load them with a lot of goods. When they see it, they were easy target for thieves. So they used to stop the caravans and then rob it. They used to stop them and then steal from this caravan. It is hardly you see a caravan or people going for trade and they are not stopped and robbed. But Mecca, people coming from Mecca, they used to respect them. They used not to interfere they used not to stop them on their way to rob them. Because if a particular tribe try to do that, they will remove your idol for you. They will remove it out of the Kaaba. So because of that, they used to fear them. So one, they have the security in traveling. Two, they could travel to wherever they want. Be it whether they could travel to this country, the Furs, where the Furs have influence, then they could travel to where the Romans have influence without any of them complaining. And two, as I said, security. They could travel without anyone interfering in stopping them to rob them. So they were security, and then there is what? Business, trade. They could go and get their provisions that they need. And then, even with that, there was security in their travel. No one tried to stop them or rob them. So, يَلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. Allah made them, Allah accustomed them. So they see this as a habit. It was just part of their, they just see it was something casual to them. Other tribes, if they are going, they either have only one choice. They either have one choice, or even if with that one choice, they have security concerns. So, يَلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. They've been accustomed. So, رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. Rihla here is mansub because it is maf'ulun bihi. It is maf'ulun bihi. So, this يَلَافِهِمْ is acting as if it's a verb. I hope that is clear. يَلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. Remember, this accustomed is the verb. And then, this is maf'ulun bihi. It's acting like the object of the verb. I hope that is clear. So that's why it is masub here. إِلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. So this monopoly, it was granted to them by Allah. Subhanallah. So let's see what Allah says. after Allah granting them this favor, and of course we all know whenever Allah mentioned his favors, mainly he called for shukr to be done. He called for gratitude. So that is why we have seen فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. So they should enslave themselves to the master of this house. The man that is Kaaba. The Kaaba is the main thing that Allah has used to grant them this monopoly and grant them this that Allah has used to grant them security and even provisions. Allah has granted them provision. They could go and get their provisions from wherever they want, and even security. These two things Allah has granted them through the sababiyya of the Kaaba. So Allah specifically is mentioning this Kaaba to remind them of the fact that He is the one who granted them. And Allah didn't just say anything. He says, فَلْيَعْبُدُوا. They should enslave themselves. Whenever you hear Abd, what comes to your mind? Abd is a slave. So whenever there is a slave, there is what? There is a master. So Allah is saying they should enslave themselves. And what do you think of a slave? A slave is someone who has no choice. A slave is someone who has no choice. So meaning they should enslave themselves to the master of this house. Meaning, if you are a slave, as I said, you have no choice. There's difference between فَلْيَشْكُرُوا. Allah didn't say فَلْيَشْكُرُوا. They should show gratitude. You know, you could be showing gratitude while still worshipping idols. That's why we have mushrikeen. You have an idol, but still, he can still say thanks to Allah. Something can happen, and then you see someone who's a disbeliever, you say thank God. What's standing? He has just thanked Allah. So he has done shukr. Actually, he's not an abid. He's not a slave. A slave is someone who has submitted totally. You have no choice. Everything in your life is dictated by Islam. What Islam says, that's what you do. What Islam prohibits, that's what you stay away. So Allah says they should submit themselves completely. They should submit themselves completely. They should enslave themselves. You know, these are people who worship idols. They could, if Allah should say, they could be worshiping Allah and still worshiping their idols. Allah says, they should submit completely. They should enslave themselves. And negate all other things. That's what Allah is. That's the beauty of this word here. فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ, the master of this house. And if you look at the fa here, this is fa as-sababiyya, like Sheikh Usaymin says. This fa here, it is mainly fa sababiyya. Because of this ni'am, if you are not thanking Allah for any other ni'am or any other blessing, they should thank Allah for that blessing. The blessing of this house, which has granted them the rihlat al-shita'i was-sayf, which has granted them security in getting their provisions and then being protected, like we have seen in Surah Al-Ankabut. أَوَلَمْ يَرَوْا أَنَّا جَعَلْنَا حَرَمًا آمِنًا وَيُتَخَطَّفُ النَّاسُ مِنْ حَوْلِهِمْ. You know, if you look at the surrounding Arabia, there's wars going all over. People are being kidnapped. There are wars. There is insecurity around the place. But look at Makkah. Makkah is the most protected city that you can think of. You know, it's the most protected city. Even animals and plants, they are protected. You know, in Makkah you are not allowed to cut trees, even grasses. Killing of animals, you are not supposed to kill. You are not supposed to hunt. Animals and plants, they are even protected. Even fighting, you can't do it in Makkah. It's a protected place. Haraman Amin, and it's a protected place. Place that is meant for security. So Allah gave them this security. Allah made this place a place of security. But if you look at the surrounding of Makkah, just immediate around Makkah, you see whatever is happening, wars and then insecurity, kidnapping, robbery, and all these things that are happening surrounding Makkah. But they are seeing that their place is just safe. So Allah says, فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. If they are not showing gratitude to Allah because of any other ni'am, but this at least, this ni'am, these blessings, be grateful, enslave yourself to Allah because of those ones, because of these two things. You know, as I said, a stable country need these two things. For a country to be stable, you need security, and you need provisions, food to eat, and to be secure. Even a human being, if you are going to worship Allah. So this is teaching us that if there is insecurity and then there is hunger, people are not able to worship Allah very well. But Allah provided all this to Quraish. And so he says, فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. They should enslave themselves to the master of this house. And mainly if you look at رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ, who put the foundation of the Kaaba there? Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. So this is indirectly, Allah is indirectly reminding them of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. Allah says about Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam, shakiran li an ummi. He was someone who was grateful for the blessings that Allah granted him. So indirectly, Allah is reminding them, look back to your father, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. He was someone who was very grateful. What about you? That's what indirectly Allah is reminding them. Because whenever you see the Kaaba, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam, he was the one who put the foundation of the Kaaba. And what can you think about Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam? Submission. He was someone who was totally submitted to Allah. So indirectly Allah is reminding them of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. And what cannot even be forgotten is about his dua. The dua that Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam he made. He made the dua that, like Allah told us, وَإِذْ قَالَ إِبْرَاهِيمُ رَبِّ جَعَلَ هَذَا بَلَدًا آمِنًا. He prayed that Allah should make this particular. You look at it, it is a wadi غير it's a valley. It doesn't have any produce. It cannot produce anything. So the place is meant for the original state is that there is hunger in it, and we shall see it when we come to the next ayah. Originally, the place is a place of hunger. So Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he looked at it being a valley and then a desert land, and he prayed to Allah. Rabbi ja'al haza baladan aminan. Allah should make this place secure. Warzuq ahlahu min as-samarat. Subhanallah. And provide his people with fruits, with produce, farm produce. That is feeding them indirectly. Allah should grant them food. So these two things Allah has, Ibrahim alayhi salatu wasalam, he has prayed, meaning his dua is accepted. And that's what we are seeing in this surah. And you can see it in Mecca. There's security and then there's provisions. Even though the place is not a place where there is food, but they are not hungry. They are being fed by Allah. And there's security there. There's security. So Allah accepted the prayer of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. Allah accepted the prayer of Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. And so Allah mentioning the Kaaba here, specifically he's alluding to Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. He's just reminding them about Ibrahim alayhi salatu wassalam. He was someone who was very grateful. And Allah is telling them that they should be grateful by submitting themselves. Okay, the best way they could be shakur, they can show gratitude is by submitting themselves to the Lord, to the master of this Kaaba, of this house. الَّذِي أَطْعَمَهُمْ مِنْ جُوعٍ وَآمَنَهُمْ مِنْ خَوْفٍ. The one who has fed them despite hunger. وَآمَنَهُمْ مِنْ خَوْفٍ. And he protected them, he provided them with security despite fear. Allah is finally concluding that he is the one who fed them. When you are feeding someone, if you are feeding someone, of course, the person is hungry. There's no way you feed someone who's not hungry. So Allah mentioned min ju'in here. Zamakhshari, he comments on this min here. And then he says that this min, bimana, it is ta'liliya, is to give, bimana, for. He fed them. Why? Because of hunger. Or he fed them despite hunger. I think that would be the best way to put it. He fed them despite hunger. And as I've already said, the original state of the place is hunger. Why didn't get it? It's a place, a valley, there's no produce from it. If you plant, there is not going to be, it won't bear anything. So the place is, the original state of the place is a hunger. So Allah says that أَطْعَمَهُمْ مِنْ جُوعٍ. He fed them despite hunger. Despite the fact that the original state of the place is hunger, but he still provides them. They are still able, they are not hungry. Despite that fact, they are not hungry. They get whatever they want to eat. وَآمَنَهُمْ مِنْ خَوْفٍ. And then he protected them. The same thing, he protected them, he granted them security despite fear. Meaning that the place is a place, they of themselves, they can protect themselves. Look at Abraham. When Abraham came, we all saw what happened. They ran and then they left the Kaaba. And then they went into hiding. So they themselves, they have no power whatsoever to protect themselves. Unless yes, despite the fact that there is insecurity in the place, Amanahum, he secured them from fear. Some scholars also say that this meaning is tabaidiyah, is for tabaid, for distancing. He fed them away from hunger. He granted them excessive food or excessive fruits in abundance, so that they are far from hunger. So tabaid, It's for tab'id, to distance them from hunger. And similar thing, وَآمَنَهُمْ مِنْ خَوْفٍ, and then he protected them, and then they were far from insecurity. They were far from fear. They had nothing to do with fear. So this is what Allah mentioned here. Allah mentioned the ni'mah, the ni'am, the blessings that He has conferred on Quraish. And then He called that they should enslave themselves to the master of this house. And then Allah also mentioned the fact that He is the one who atamahum min ju'in wa amanahum min khawf. He provided them despite the fact that the place is a place of hunger, and then He protected them despite the fact that there is insecurity in the place. All this, the sabab being the Kaaba. Allah mentioned all these favors that He has conferred on Quraysh. He asked them for, in substitute, at least they should enslave themselves, if for no other blessing, but for this particular blessing that is obvious in front of them. They should enslave themselves to the master of this house. Inshallah, in the next surah, that will be Surah Al-Ma'un, we shall see their reaction. We shall see, this is how Allah want them to be. Allah want them to enslave themselves to the master of the house. Surah Al-Ma'un will tell us how the reality, how they are rather acting. رأيت الذي يكذب بالدين وذلك الذي يدعو اليتيم ولا يحض على طعام المسكين. We shall see all this. So inshallah, try to read Surah Al-Ma'un, and then try to read it, and then inshallah in the next surah we'll try to dive into it. Despite what Allah has commanded them to do here, we shall see in reality how they are rather acting. We shall see it in the next surah. This, inshallah, with this will come to the conclusion of the study of this particular beautiful surah. جزاكم الله خيرا وبارك الله لي ولكم في القرآن الحكيم ونفعني وإياكم بالآيات والذكر الحكيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.